Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome you all to this remote meeting of the Constitutional Review Committee of Pembrokeshire County Council, which is being live streamed. I'd like to introduce everyone as who are in attendance today, and that's myself, Alan Denison, Councillor Alan Denison, Councillor Aled Thomas, Councillor Stephen Alderman, Councillor Hugh Murphy, Councillor David Howlett, Councillor Mike Stoddard, and Councillor Jacob Williams. Also in attendance from Democratic Services is Susan Sanders, Head of Democratic Services, Elise Hinchcliffe, and Kate Matthews. And also on the call is Rhiann Young as officers. Have we got Kelly Byrne? I can't see up on the screen here, Susan. No?
No, Chair.
Okay, so we'll move on to apologies. Go on to agenda item number 4, which is the senior responsibility allowance for the presiding member on pages 9 to 12 of the pack, which we have discussed at the committee meeting, the working committee meeting. Just on. Go on, sorry, Susan.
Shall I present that, Chair, for you?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So the committee has been asked to consider whether the presiding member should receive a special responsibility allowance, and if so, to make a recommendation to council accordingly. So in terms of background, at its meeting on the 13th of December 2018, council resolved to establish the role, and the terms of the appointment are set out in your report. I draw your attention to point B, remuneration, which states that the position should not be eligible for remuneration. So the independent remuneration panel for Wales sets the basic, senior and civic salaries for elected members of principal councils. The IRPW report states that if a presiding member is appointed, they do not have to be remunerated. However, if they are, the post will count towards the salary of band 3, which would be the basic salary of £17,600 plus the 8,800 SRA element. So that would total £26,400 for remuneration. So the matter is before you today following the recommendation of the Democratic Services Committee on the 27th of June last year, where the committee resolved that the presiding member should remain unremunerated and the matter be considered as part of the constitutional review. So as members of the Constitutional Review Working Group, you will be aware that on the 14th of September, the working group discussed this matter. And given the complexity of the role undertaken in chairing lengthy and challenging council meetings and associated duties with the administration of council meetings, the working group supported the presiding member being remunerated either on a full or a half SRA. And they also supported the principle that if paid, the payment should be deferred until after the next annual meeting. I have contacted the panel to confirm whether the role could be paid as a half salary, and they have confirmed that the post cannot be paid a half salary. It would have to be a full payment, albeit the person in the role could forfeit all, half or some of their payment. They are going to consider this further and provide final advice. That's their position at the moment. So to facilitate the remuneration of the presiding member role, there are a number of options that could be considered. These are set out in your report. Firstly, the leader hasn't appointed up to the maximum number of 9 additional cabinet members, so there is a vacant salary there. But the leader has indicated that he wishes to retain the flexibility to appoint a 10th member if the need arose. So this option isn't really viable. The council could review the number of chairs that are remunerated, taking into account different levels of responsibility. The council could review the number of overview and scrutiny committees with a view to reducing those numbers. Or the council could apply to the IRPW for a specific or additional salary that is outside the current remuneration framework. although I'm not sure if this would be favourable given that there is already a vacant senior salary. So the committee is being asked to consider whether the presiding member should be remunerated, and if so, which option to recommend to council. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Mike. Alid?
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to confirm with Mrs. Sanders that because option 1 says this option's not available, but actually is it available? Because I feel like I'm getting slightly mixed messages in terms of option 1. And also, we hadn't really considered the fact that there is a potential 5th option of not having a presiding member at all, and going back to the old way it used to be of the chair who does receive a salary, which I know isn't the same. It's a different pot, isn't it, as we've described it previously of
Yes.
what the money we're talking about now. But is that not a 5th option that we can actually consider and make a recommendation to council?
But I think it would be, I will propose then, as a proposal, that we support the principle that the presiding member should be remunerated. We can then argue about the details of how, remunerated positions and the rest of it. So I will propose that.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Councillor Hugh Murphy?
Yeah, I'll second that. That's short and sweet and to the point. So I could live with that.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement with what Mike's proposed, but we'll take a show of hands. We've got a proposal there, folks.
Can we have a roll call, please, Chair?
Yeah. So, all those in favour of Mike's proposal, please signify. Showing your hands, please.
We need a roll call, I think.
Oh, sorry. So, Aled Thomas.
Against.
Steve Alderman.
For.
Hugh Murphy.
For.
David Howlett.
Against.
Mike Stoddard.
For.
Jacob Williams.
For.
Ange Tinley.
Against.
And myself is for. 4-3, is it?
I'll make that 5-3, Chair.
5-3, sorry.
Yeah, so that's carried.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Councillor Hugh Murphy, you've got your... No, it's gone. Okay. Rhiann, I think you want to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Just ask you how you would like us to take this forward now. We've got a sort of decision in principle, but, how would you prefer that we take this forward? Would you like us to go away with this principle and come back with with more options, having looked into it, or do you want us to? How do you want us to proceed?
I given that Aled is also brought in option 5, which was to remove the presiding member, which has to be considered. I would prefer if you did go away and rethink and come back at a later date. We did say that it wouldn't be in until annual council at the working committee, so we do have some time to come back. But it will be certainly a recommendation that we remunerate.
Sorry, Chair. The other option, obviously, is that this is taken to council now with the options of doing that. So saying that you recommend that the presiding member is remunerated, and these are the options for so doing.
Yes.
Or do you want it to come back to this committee to make a recommendation on that aspect as well?
Well, we've got a seminar next week, haven't we? Or this week?
Well, this week is the Constitution seminar.
Oh, yes, sorry. Okay, I'm minded that we go straight to council, to be perfectly honest. If you come back with just an option, can we actually make any firm decisions? Mike, I'll bow to you on that one.
Yeah, well, I agree with what Ryan says. If it goes to council with to the next meeting of council with a recommendation that we do remunerate. Obviously, if council doesn't approve that, we needn't worry about all these options, then need we? Yeah, and then if Ryan puts the options, if we do approve it, then we can discuss the options. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Paul, thank you.
It's good. Yeah. The live then, Chair.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I welcome you all to this remote meeting of the Constitutional Review Committee of Pembrokeshire County Council, which is being live streamed. I'd like to introduce the committee members, which is myself, Alan Dennison, Councillor Steve Alderman, Councillor Michelle Bateman, Councillor Josh Bainan, Councillor Pat Davis, Councillor David Howlett, Councillor Paul Miller, Councillor Hugh Murphy, Councillor Michael Stoddard, Councillor Jacob Williams, Councillor Aled Thomas, who's standing in for Aaron Carey, Councillor Aaron Carey, and Councillor Vanessa Thomas, who is standing in for Councillor Elwyn Morse. We are waiting for Councillor Angie Tinley to join, so hopefully she will be able to join us this morning. Also in attendance, we have Susan Sanders, Head of Democratic Services, Rhiann Young, Head of Law and Governance, Elise Hinchcliffe, who's the Democratic and Scrutiny Services Officer, and Kate Matthews, who's the Democratic Services Assistant. As said, apologies have been received from Councillor Aaron Airy. So Aled Thomas has been appointed as reserve member, and also apologies from Councillor Elwyn Morse. Hence, Vanessa Thomas has been appointed as reserve for the meeting. We'll go on to item 3, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. To approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 2nd of October 2023. There's copies in English and Welsh, and I'm assuming that everybody's read them. Does anybody have any issues with the minutes? No. Can I ask for a mover and a seconder for those minutes then, please? So we've got Steve Alderman to move, and can I have a seconder?
Councillor Murphy's trying to put his hand up, Chair.
Yeah, I'll second, Chair.
Thank you very much. The minutes are approved.
Chair,
Show of hands.
no. Can I raise a point about the minutes, please?
Yes.
After the resolution of the committee, it says the head of law and governance suggested another option would be to put forward the agreed recommendation to council, along with the options as to how the post could be remunerated. I think at full council there was some suggestion where this was considered that the committee might have suggested that the option of abolishing the post was put forward.
These are actually the minutes of our last committee meeting, not the council. So
I appreciate that. What I'm saying is that the minutes don't reflect what was suggested. That's all. Not to my mind, anyway.
In what respect?
About the option that would go to council of abolishing the role of presiding member.
Nobody raised that. Abolishing it.
You must have attended a different meeting than I did, Councillor Dennison.
Well, let me assure you, Jacob, that I was there all the time, and the option 5 was the one that was raised for putting the chair back in as presiding officer to combine the two as it was before. And you weren't there at that particular, or certainly weren't on camera at that time.
Oh, I was at the meeting, but exactly what you've just said is what I'm saying is not reflected in the minutes. You've made my point, but there we are. That's thank you.
Okay. So can I have a show of hands for the minutes then, please?
Chair, just want to point out it is a reference in there. The point,
Yeah, I think it was.
a further point, is in that first paragraph after the resolution. The suggestion of a fifth option by Councillor Thomas, and that it should also be considered. So that was the point that was raised, and you did specifically ask for that option to be considered.
No, I contest that we absolutely did not request that would be considered. That's what I'm contesting.
Well,
but
Jacob, let me halt this now. It's on the webcast on the last set of minutes with the webcast at 20 minutes past the hour. That was decided that we would put that in.
But I think it would be, I will propose then, as a proposal, that we support the principle that the presiding member should be remunerated. We can then argue about the details of how, remunerated positions and the rest of it. So I will propose that.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Councillor Hugh Murphy?
Yeah, I'll second that. That's short and sweet and to the point. I could live with that.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement with what Mike's proposed, but we'll take a show of hands. We've got a proposal there, folks.
Can we have a roll call, please, Chair?
4-3, is it?
I'll make that 5-3, Chair.
5-3, sorry.
Yeah, so that's carried.
You went off camera slightly before and you came back on to camera.
No, that's just simply not true. I was at the meeting the whole time. So
well, you went off camera. You went off camera.
I was
on a point of order.
My camera was on the whole time. I was at the whole of the meeting, Chair.
Your camera was not on it the whole time. If you have a look at the webcast, your camera went off.
That doesn't mean I was at the meeting.
Chairman. Point of order, Chairman.
Yes, go on, Mr. Stoddard. Councillor Stoddard.
Councillor Stoddard, thanks. At no time was what has been suggested proposed and seconded and voted on. It can't possibly be a resolution of your committee. You're the chairman, you should know this. It can't possibly be a resolution of your committee unless it's gone through those processes.
I don't get where you're getting there, Mike, to be perfectly honest.
We did not, nobody proposed and nobody seconded that we should go for that fifth option, and it was never voted on. We seem to be adopting the practices that we used at the working group in the committee. The committee is a formal body, and anything that comes out of that committee has got to be proposed, seconded, and voted upon.
I beg to differ, and we're actually voting on the minutes now. So, Councillor Miller.
With respect, Chair, I'm not sure how you can beg to differ. Councillor Stoddart's clearly right, isn't he?
Councillor Miller, can I stop you? You weren't at the meeting, so you cannot comment on that.
Point of principle with you, and it's a formal
You cannot comment on that as you weren't at the meeting.
Of course I can. It's a point of principle about how the meeting operates. There needs to be a proposer, a seconder, and a resolution.
Please listen. You weren't at the meeting, so you cannot comment on what you said.
Councillor Dennison, you're chairman, not Caesar. I put my hand up. I was called. I'll make my point, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your point. Rhiann.
Thank you, Chair. I just wonder whether we could just deal with the accuracy of the minutes at this particular moment. I think we'll all agree that it was messy on the last occasion, but it's clearly there's some political will to deal with this matter. So I think that we should just move on to the next agenda item, deal with the matter head on clearly, and make some sort of very clear recommendations to Council for the next occasion.
Thank you, Rhiann, and I totally agree. So can we have a show of hands for the minutes, please? I'm not taking any more. We're going on to the minutes.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Might I suggest you do a roll call, given a number of us, I believe, intend to vote against the adoption of the minutes?
It's fine. We're going to do a roll call. That's what I just asked for. A show of hands.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. A roll call and a show of hands, as you may be aware.
I asked for the show of hands, but if you want a roll call, then we'll have a roll call. So let's have a roll call. And I'll go down them in the order. Councillor Pat Davis.
Sorry, Chair, I cannot vote as I was not at the meeting, but I know from further discussions in the Constitutional Working Group that this topic never came up as to should we abolish the position. But I cannot vote on these minutes as I wasn't present at the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Stoddard.
Against.
Councillor David Howlett.
For.
Councillor Josh Bainan.
Against.
Councillor Aled Thomas.
For.
Councillor Jacob Williams.
Against.
Councillor Angie Tinley.
For.
Councillor Hugh Murphy.
For.
And myself is for. I think that's the ones that were at the meeting last time.
Well, I'm sorry to keep doing this to you, Chairman, but another point of order. You don't seem to be doing particularly well this morning. I'm perfectly entitled to vote on the minutes, whether I was there or not. I've had the benefit of watching the webcast, and I don't believe they accurately reflect the conduct of that meeting on the day. So I'd be grateful if my vote could be asked for, please.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Paul Miller.
Against.
And Councillor Michelle Bateman.
Abstain. I wasn't at the meeting and I haven't watched it.
Thank you. So how many have we got there, Rianne, please?
5 for, 4 against. I have Sue. Do you have the same?
Oh, sorry, Councillor Steve Alderman. I missed. Sorry, Steve.
Thank you, being as I
The
propose.
list isn't all the way down the bottom.
4.
4.
And I think Councillor Thomas might have been missed as well, Chair.
No, I voted for.
You voted for.
There are 2 Councillor Thomases present.
Vanessa Thomas wasn't there last time.
I wasn't at that meeting, so I would
But
have
again, a vote should be asked for, Chairman.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Councillor Vanessa Thomas wasn't at the meeting and she's stand-in for Councillor Elwyn Moore. So I don't need to ask her.
You are still entitled to vote on the minutes, whether you were there.
Okay, Councillor Vanessa Thomas, I do apologise.
Yeah, I'll abstain because you say I wasn't at the meeting. I have watched the webcast, but I'll abstain. I wasn't at the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that's a majority 4, I believe, Rianne.
Yeah, 5 4. So that's in.
Thank you very much.
Minutes being approved.
Minutes are approved. Right, let's get on to item 4, presiding member. And for this, I will bring in Susan to introduce this again.
Thank you, Chair. So following on our discussion, so members will be fairly familiar with this item of business now. It is back with you following the debate at Council. So members are being asked to consider whether to continue with the role of the presiding member from 2024-25, and if so, to consider whether the role should receive a special responsibility allowance. So you will recall at the meeting of Council on the 12th of October, Council was asked to consider whether to support the recommendation of this committee in support of paying the presiding member, and if so minded, to consider a number of options to facilitate that remuneration. Furthermore, you will recall that the chair of this committee, Councillor Dennison, moved a motion in support of the remuneration of the presiding member, and that was seconded by Councillor Tim Evans. This was then followed by an amendment moved by Councillor Jamie Adams for the option to not have a presiding member, and that was moved by Councillor Adams and seconded by Councillor Di Clements. Following a very lengthy debate on the matter and whether the amendment to disband the role of the presiding member was a relevant one that Council could accept, a motion to move to the next item of business was successful and the debate was ended there. So as the matter has not been resolved and following consultation with the chair, it is now before the committee today to consider the matter further to move forward. So the main considerations are set out in your report. So firstly, as a committee, you're being asked to consider whether to continue with the role of the presiding member, given the debate at full council. I would just point out, though, that having just completed a lengthy review of the Constitution, members will be aware of the significant role that the presiding member performs. The new Constitution has now been adopted and published and has 116 references to the presiding member. If members are supportive of disbanding the role, the Constitution will need to be amended accordingly, assigning the duties of the presiding member to the Chair of Council. Secondly, if the committee supports the continuation of the presiding member role, it needs to confirm its earlier decision of whether or not to remunerate the post. And then thirdly, if members support the role being remunerated, the options are set out in the report to facilitate that. Firstly, using the vacant post that's available to a cabinet member, and you'll recall the leader at council did indicate that he would be willing to accede to this option if that was the will of the chamber. Secondly, council could review the number of chairs of committees that are remunerated. It could also review the number of overview and scrutiny committees, or it could apply to the remuneration panel for a specified additional salary. Also set out the financial implications. So we've just had a revised draft report from the remuneration panel for Wales. So the additional cost would be now £9,333 plus on costs. So as per the recommendation, the committee is firstly asked to consider whether or not to recommend discontinuing with the role of the presiding member. So I think members need to consider this option first before moving to the other recommendations set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, so can I ask if anybody has any comments that they'd like to make against the presiding member staying? And we'll go first to Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chair. As you're aware, committee business requires a proposal on the table prior to debate. So I'd like to make two proposals to be considered concurrently, please. First reads as follows: that committee recommend to council that the presiding member be remunerated at the level of a scrutiny committee chair, utilising one of the current cabinet SRA allocations. And the second proposal I'd like to make is that the committee resolve no reference to discontinuing the role be included in the papers to council. Thank you. I so move.
I'll second that, Chairman.
Okay. Councillor Michelle Bateman.
I was just going to second, Chair.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I will support that proposal, but at the start of the meeting, at the start of this item, we were sort of informed that we were here to decide whether to firstly consider whether the role should be abolished, and then, if not, whether it should be remunerated. But I just don't think that is... Well, I know it's not consistent with a resolution this committee already made. And what happened at full council earlier this month was a proposal was made that went totally contrary to what the committee had recommended. And we had already supported the principle that the post should be remunerated. So it's inconceivable that a recommendation from this committee would be that the role should be abolished. A proposal was mentioned in passing by Councillor Thomas that he said, in his words, an option 5 would be to abolish the role. Now, I take him to mean that an option, not option 5, but an option in the broadest sense of the word would be to abolish the roll. But clearly that was inconsistent with this committee's view, which had already voted quite strongly. It wasn't even on a casting vote. It was a clear majority that we supported remunerating the roll. So that should have cut dead any suggestion that the committee was entertaining the idea that the post should be abolished. But even if just discounting that, we never voted on abolishing the roll. And there were other things mentioned in that debate which didn't make it to the full council report. I suggested, and Councillor Stodder also suggested, that one option might be to facilitate remuneration, might be to reduce the number of committee, I think it was committees that exist, or the committee, rather than suggesting that we take the payment from the pool of cabinet SRAs, I suggested an alternative. We didn't vote on that, but that didn't make it to the report to full council, so I'm at a loss to understand why the option to abolish the roll came to full council. Nonetheless, we are where we are. I don't think what happened was very edifying. And like I say, I keep coming back to option 5 said we abolish the roll, yet options 1, 2, 3 and 4 set out how we would pay for the roll, having already decided we would support remunerating it. So option 5 was not an option 5 in any sense. And my final comment on this is, if Councillor Adams or any councillor at the October full council meeting wanted to abolish the roll, they could have done, and they can still do it by a notice of motion if they want to, but we're dealing with it now. But at that meeting, we adopted the Constitution, and if they wanted to, it was open to Councillor Adams or whoever to have moved, do you know what, now we're adopting this new Constitution, I'm going to propose that we delete the role of presiding member, and that might have been accepted by the presiding member as a valid amendment. I don't know, but there was ample opportunity for this to have been discussed.
Okay, thank you, Jacob. I think we got your message there. Thank you very much.
Well, I hope somebody does.
Can I bring Rhiannon in on that one, please, first, and then I'll come back to you, Steve.
Thank you, Chair. It is good practice. I don't deny that this was extremely untidy, but it is good practice for us to include all options in the paper, and we were asked to include that particular option. Insofar as Councillor Miller's motion goes, I completely understand that. However, I don't think is within the power of this committee to restrict what council is able to consider, given the circumstances here today, given the report that's to this committee. I don't think that it's within the power of this committee to restrict at this stage what council is allowed to consider when it gets to council. Of course, you can make a recommendation that the presiding member role stays, that it's remunerated, and it's remunerated in accordance with option 1. That's perfectly, absolutely acceptable. But I don't think you can restrict at full council, the debate there and say, I'm sorry, you are absolutely not permitted to even now go on to consider whether or not you wish to discontinue the role.
Chair, can I come back? Because that...
No, sorry, Jacob.
Chair,
I'm coming back to Steve.
That mischaracterised...
No, sorry, Jacob.
That mischaracterises what I said.
I'm sorry, Jacob. I've asked Councillor Alderman. You've had your say.
You're bullying me, you mean?
No, I'm not bullying you. I'm asking you to refrain from jumping in when you want to jump in.
Well, I want to respond to something.
I'll call you when it's your turn.
My comments have been mischaracterised.
I'll call you when it's your turn. Thank you very much. Councillor Alderman.
Thank you, Chair. I proposed the minutes as a consequence of the fact that they were correct in my mind, with the fact that we voted on remunerating the presiding member post. And that's purely the reason why there was a discussion on removal, but it was not proposed or seconded or voted upon, Chair. And you were part of that. I remember it distinctly. And as far as I'm aware, the remuneration of the presiding officer was what this committee decided to do at that last meeting. So how we go forward, the proposal that Paul has put forward, I'm happy to support up to a point. But, the arguments that have gone on so far have been about something which was not totally agreed on at the last meeting. We agreed to remunerate the officer. We did not agree to remove that post. And I'm willing to go along on those lines, hence my personal interest as a consequence of that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Alderman. I totally agree, and I think it's been misrepresented in terms of getting rid, because I think and Councillor Ali Thomas will probably want to jump in on this point, is that it was recommended that post was remunerated by utilising the existing chairman, not to get rid of the job. And then that meant that he would be paid, which was what happened prior to 2018.
But I think I will propose then, as a proposal, that we support the principle that the presiding member should be remunerated. We can then argue about the details of how, remunerated positions and the rest of it. So I will propose that.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Councillor Hugh Murphy?
Yeah, I'll second that. That's short and sweet and to the point. I could live with that.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement with what Mike proposed, but we'll take a show of hands. We've got a proposal there, folks.
Can we have a roll call, please, Chair?
4-3, is it?
I'll make that 5-3, Chair.
5-3, sorry.
Yeah, so that's carried.
But I shall bring Councillor Pat Davis in.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you for that. And I think this conversation this morning is perhaps going to go round and round in circles. But to go back to the original meeting with the Constitutional Working Group, hence that's why it is in the new Constitution. The conversation came up, and that was the first time that the conversation came up regarding the post of the presiding member. And in that meeting, we had quite a lengthy discussion. And practically, to my recollection, everyone in that working group agreed. We didn't have a vote on it, but everyone agreed that this post should be remunerated. Now, for some reason or other, it's been turned on its head. I apologise. I was not there at the meeting on the 2nd of October due to my illness. But at that original meeting, when we discussed it in the working group, and the reason why it is now in the Constitution is that we agreed that it should be a paid position. And I firmly believe it should be a paid position. It's a really responsible job. Having had the responsibility of being the presiding member, albeit just temporarily during COVID, and having been responsible for being chair of the council, the roles are two totally different positions. The presiding member has an awful lot of responsibility. The chair is responsible for civic duties. But the responsibility that presiding member has, it's not just chairing one meeting every few months. It's a continual job all the way along. You have to look and agree to the questions that come into council that members want to propose. You have to look to see, does it fall within the Constitution? Is that question correct? Is it accessible? And the notices of motion. You have to be really familiar with the Constitution. You've got to think on your feet. You've got to control 60 people, both sides of a chamber, and it's quite a job this morning for you to chair this meeting, just with a few of us. I really sincerely believe, having done that position, that the position of presiding member should be remunerated. And really, the original thought was that's why it was put in the Constitution and why it should come to full council. Never in that meeting was it discussed originally that the post should be abolished. So I will not agree to the post being abolished, but the fact that the presiding member should have a remuneration, having had experience of doing that job.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Paul Miller.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I'd just like to review sort of Rhiann's contribution earlier. Rhiann, a couple of questions, if I may start. Firstly, the report to council, whose report is that? Am I right in my understanding that it's the report of this committee?
Well, yes, it is the report of the committee, but...
So if I can just come back then. So it's the report of this committee. Clearly, this committee can't fetter the debate or discussion at council. That's in the purview of the presiding member. But it absolutely is for this committee to decide the contents of its report to council. And therefore, it's clearly within the gift of this committee to include or exclude particular items from its report. Now, if council and the presiding member receive a proposal to do something else, that's for the presiding member to decide if it's within the confines of the agenda item or not. Is that correct?
It's a really difficult question, because I think that the ideal circumstance here, we've been presented with a question. This question needs to be considered fully at full council. We're going to end up with a notice of motion in any event. I think it ought to be dealt with straight. I don't think it's within the purview of this committee to be able to restrict what is put in the reports in order to enable to prevent debate at full council.
Well, but you've made a few leaps there, haven't you? This committee is not attempting to prevent debate. It's simply directing the contents of its own report, which clearly is within the purview of this committee. And in terms of, I understand your sort of corporate view for tidiness in decision making, but you referenced there, we've got to answer this question. And that's an interesting point as well, isn't it? Because what is this question? This question, as far as this committee is concerned, is whether to remunerate the presiding member. This committee has never engaged in a formal acknowledgement that there's a debate to be had about whether to abolish the post or not. The fact that there was a debate on that point at council is kind of neither here nor there. So, I mean, unless you are formally ruling out my second proposal, Rhian, I intend to leave it there, because I think it clearly is within the gift of this committee to dictate the contents of the report that it proposes to council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Councillor Jacob Williams.
Thank you, Chair. It was the 27th of June 2022. Can I take members' minds back to that? Those of you who are members, I'm not, of the Democratic Services Committee. At that meeting, the Democratic Services Committee considered senior responsibility allowance for presiding member. The resolution of that committee on 27th of June 2022 was resolved. The motion undertaken by show of hands was carried that the presiding member should remain unremunerated and that the matter be considered as part of the constitutional review. Councillor Miller is totally correct to say the question before the constitutional review working group and then the committee was, should that post be remunerated? There was no other question. It was duly considered at length throughout the whole of the constitutional review and at the constitutional review committee, where we resolved that we would support the principle that the post should be remunerated. There was no question that the post should be abolished. I accept it was mentioned during the debate. One option, Councillor Thomas said, was that the post should be abolished. The committee, having voted to support remunerating the role, brought an end to that suggestion, even though I don't think it was a suggestion for that item of business, which again was about should the post be remunerated. And the response I received from Mrs. Young was to suggest that I was saying that this committee would be limiting full council's scope to potentially abolish the role. I said today, and I said at full council, there was ample opportunity, should there have been political will, to abolish the role. Right? I don't deny that. What I deny is that this committee considered, we did not vote on, we did not recommend any suggestion that the post should be abolished. We couldn't have, because the role, we were there to determine should the role be remunerated, and we supported the principle that it would be. Any suggestion then that the role should be abolished to pay for remunerating it is garbage. It is totally nonsensical. I absolutely reject the suggestion that we were asked at the committee, or we asked at the committee for officers to bring an option to council which would see the abolition of the role. I do accept that they may have interpreted it to mean we will bring all options to facilitate remuneration of the role. I accept that might have been an interpretation they made, because we didn't decide how it would be funded. We just decided we would support it. We said it would be up to full council. I absolutely deny that what became option 5 was a valid option for remunerating the role. It is totally inconsistent, because abolishing the role, if you abolish the role, there would be no role to remunerate. It was not a valid option to remunerate the role, Chair. The question we were considering, as I say, originated 27th of June 2022. And finally, Chair, thank you for indulging me. If Councillor Adams had moved at the October full council meeting under the heading of this item of business that we abolish the role of Head of Legal Services, he would rightly have been told this is totally out with the proposal, out with this item of business. He would be correctly told, you cannot discuss that. I'm suggesting it was also totally out with the business to be proposing that the post should be abolished, notwithstanding that he had options to do that if he wanted to. But that is my case, Chair, and nothing I've heard today suggests to me that that I was wrong about this. My recollection of that meeting was clear. As you say, the webcast is available, and I'll be supporting Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Before we just jump in, I would like to give the opportunity, before inviting Councillor Stoddart in, to Aled Thomas to maybe clarify his position on this as to whether it would be abolish the role, or, as I was led to believe, was the manner in which it could be paid by merging the role. It's not abolishing, it's merging and doing what he's paid for currently. Councillor Aled Thomas.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you for that, Chairman. Well, first of all, just before I start, I would like to reject some of the claims that have been made that I have consistently been against this role being paid, and it seems that you can't make claims that were happening in a working group and saying I said things which I didn't say. I know you didn't directly point it at me, but by saying everyone in the group said it, you're referring to that I'm changing my mind. I've consistently been against this role being paid, and I've consistently said that it should be that the chairman of council chairs council. If you don't feel as a chairman you'll have the skills to chair the council, then you shouldn't be putting your name forward to be chair of the council, in my opinion. But what I have been saying, what my option 5 was to bring the chairmanship back chairing council, which in theory I suppose abolishes presiding member, but actually it merges it. The chairman of the council is also the presiding member. To me, you're not abolishing the role, you're just saying that the chairman is the presiding member. So that's consistently the point I've been taking. That's what I envisaged when I brought out this option 5, and I'm apologise for ever bringing it up. It seems to have caused a lot more carnage than I thought it would. But I've consistently been against this. And I remember Councillor Stoddart and myself, he actually, I think the words he said to me was, I shouldn't be pandering to the public when I said that I don't think we're fiscally able to pay for this role. How can we, when we've got these millions, tens of millions of pounds of deficits in our budget, yet we're considering to bump up other councillors' pay? And I know, and that's nothing against the current presiding member. I think I've said this on record. He's a fantastic person, a fantastic human being, but he's a fantastic presiding member. I mean, also, but what I'm saying is, I've consistently been against this. So for members of this committee to say that all of a sudden now people are changing their minds when the public is on, I think it's just incorrect. So I will be voting against Councillor Miller's recommendation. And surprisingly, I don't see any particularly point in me moving an amendment, because I think it deals with Councillor Miller's proposal, deals with it either way. But that's the point I've been making. I don't think it's right for us fiscally at the minute to do this. I personally don't see how it's actually abolishing the role of presiding member. It's simply calling the chairman also the presiding member, just in the way that the vice chairman is automatically the deputy presiding member. There's no difference there. We don't vote on the vice chairman being the deputy presiding member, in my opinion, do we? So, sorry, the chairman of the council is currently the deputy presiding member by default. What's to say that the chairman can't be by default the presiding member? We're not abolishing the role. We're just saying that it is the same role as the chairman is carried out by the chairman. So I'll leave it there and perhaps let that digest and come back in later.
Thank you, Aled. Councillor Mike Stoddart.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Well, I I've listened to Councillor Howlett Thomas, and I just wonder how many angels can dance on the head of a pin in Johnston, because that was a piece of sophistry par excellence. I think it's ironic that within an hour of adopting the Constitution, I couldn't be at the council meeting because I wasn't feeling too well, but I have watched it obviously on the webcast, and it's ironic that within an hour of adopting the new Constitution, the independent political group were attempting to ride roughshod over it by introducing an amendment, in inverted commas, which I can't think that anybody can believe that amendment fell within the terms of 426(1) of the Constitution. It just was not ever a valid amendment. I can't imagine.
Get to the point for this meeting. I don't want to go over what went on at the last full council because it's irrelevant. We're trying to sort this out.
I'd rather you didn't interrupt me, Alan. Thank you. Your chairmanship of this meeting has been an absolute disgrace. If the Constitution allowed it, I would put forward a notice of no confidence in you, because you are a horrible bullying chairman. I'm afraid.
Thank you, Mike. Can we ask?
No, I haven't finished yet.
I think you have. I mean, you're supposed to treat individuals with respect, Mike, and with respect to yourself. You're not doing that.
Excuse me, Chair. On a point of order, perhaps one could say the same about yourself.
Or with respect to which
Councillor Mike Stoddard hasn't finished speaking. He's allowed the right to continue to say what he wants to say.
Councillor David Howlett.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be fairly brief, and I would.
I disquiet about your chairmanship of this meeting. I think Councillor Stoddart's got a point.
Councillor Paul Miller, you haven't been invited to speak. When you're invited to speak, then you'll be allowed to speak. Thank you very much, Councillor David Howlett.
Thank you, Chair. I would encourage all members here to maybe just reflect on their language. I don't think it's very beneficial for any of us from any quarter to maybe speak as we've done today. I'm not sure what how many people are looking in, but what they would think if they do. So I'll be brief and I'll keep it very hopefully sensible. I was pretty good attender at the working group meetings. I think I didn't attend all of them though. And in terms of my support or otherwise for the role of playing the role of the presiding member, I don't think that I was present. Oh, I'm sure that I wasn't present at the meeting. It was discussed, because I'm sure I would have taken the opportunity to speak and vote against it if there was a vote. So I'd say that in terms of that aspect. In terms of potentially combining the roles, of course, that will mean that the chairman will continue with an allowance. So you chair the meeting, you do your other civic duties, you get an allowance. So I can't support Paul's amendment there, proposal. But as I say, I would urge everyone in this meeting maybe to take the volume down somewhat, because I don't think it benefits us greatly, to be honest. Thank you.
Totally agree. Thank you, David. Jacob, I'll bring you back in. And then I think we need to move to Paul Miller's.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I agree with Councillor Howlett if he's directing his comments to you, Chair, because I just think that Councillor Stoddart, well, I know he said he hadn't finished talking. So as Chair, you've got to allow him to finish what he was saying. He hadn't even got started, at least the impression I got. So I would hope that you're going to allow all members of any political hue to contribute to the debate, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Rhiann, can I bring you in first, please?
Thank you, Chair. Just with regards to the second part of that motion, that the committee resolved that no reference to discontinuing the role be included in the subsequent papers to council. Can I ask Councillor Miller if you would be prepared to withdraw that? There is just no way that Sue and I can comply with that. There will be a summary of the debate. of this entire debate. Obviously, whatever motion is passed will be the recommendation of this committee, but it's absolutely impossible for Sue and I to be in a position where we can comply with that. We're going to have to summarise this debate, and it will have to be open to council to make a different decision to this committee.
Councillor Miller?
I'll have a think about it, Chair, while Councillor Stoddart's contributing, if that's okay with you.
Yes, certainly. Councillor Stoddart.
With respect to Rhian's last point, I'm not sure I agree with it, but would it be better if it was reworded to say that and that the committee resolve that the options for financing this post be restricted to the 4 original options without the 5th option? You see, what I can't understand, as I was going to say before you rudely interrupted me, Chairman, we've had dozens of meetings of this constitutional review working group, and at no time has anybody ever suggested that we should abolish the role of presiding member. This was a piece of pure political opportunism, I'm afraid, by the independent political group that you now belong to, having told everybody you would be a true independent. But you can't expect too much by way of logic, I suppose, from people who can't see that that's a contradiction in terms, belonging to a political independent.
What I choose to do, Mike, is my business. Can you get to your point?
I've made my point. I just think that if we reworded, I don't agree with Rhian that this committee can put any recommendation it likes to the full council in as long as it's relevant to the issue in front of us. And if Mrs. Young objects to the wording of the last part of Councillor Miller's resolution, I suggest that we just revert to the 4 options that were on the table before. The 5th option, I'm afraid, was just a piece of political opportunism and I'm rather disappointed to have to say, the Tory party, which is supposed to be the party of the rule of law and the constitution and all that nonsense. That they ally themselves with the independent political group in what is just a piece of political opportunism, I'm afraid.
Councillor Paul Miller.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I do, Rhian, I don't agree with you, but I am happy to sort of try and find an accommodation. And if we're going to have to proceed with papers that reference the abolition of the presiding member, then probably that's going to allow for a debate and a vote on the abolition of the presiding member at council, which I do object to, because I just don't understand where the question of abolishing the presiding member came from. I mean, to be frank, the fact that Aled mentions it in a meeting of this committee, it's not proposed, seconded or voted upon, and it finds itself as an option at the full council table, is just wrong. Like, that should not happen. That is not the way it's supposed to work. But if we can't avoid that debate, then I've perhaps got an alternative proposal. I wouldn't be at all surprised if you twitch your knees about this one, but that the committee confirmed to council its absolute opposition to abolishing the presiding member post and condemns efforts led by the independent political group to surreptitiously do so. And I so move, Chair.
Rhian?
I think, as you anticipated, Councillor Miller, I do have a bit of an issue with the second part of that. I mean, obviously, given that we will be summarising this debate in the report, perhaps your strength of feeling could be imparted, and I'm sure it's not gone, it's not been missed. But can we just, perhaps if we're going to move that, can we just move the first part?
Councillor Miller.
Is there a rule against it, Rhian? So let's be clear. I know you might not like it, but is there a rule that says I can't do it?
Well, if it was a notice of motion, it would potentially be ruled out for being vexatious. So I think perhaps there is.
Well, on that basis, Chair, perhaps Rhiannon can summarise the debate, which includes this contribution, and I'm happy to withdraw it. Thank you.
Okay. Jacob, you...
Yeah, I was only brief. I was just going to say, as it was the case last time, I think it should be enough as a recommendation to full council that this committee resolves that the presiding recommends to council that the presiding member should be remunerated. That to me should be enough to rule out any suggestion that we abolish the role to fund it. But of course, that common sense wasn't too common at the time of the last council meeting, because actually it came up as an option. So I can understand Councillor Miller's dilemma. He doesn't want this to be an option. I'm suggesting it shouldn't be an option because it's purely illogical. But I suppose we should just proceed on a vote on remunerating the presiding member and using up one of the existing SRA allocations. Can I just throw a slight spanner in the works and suggest that to the report to full council, and it might be better to include it as a part of our resolution, if we approve, or full council approves Councillor Miller's proposal that we remunerate the presiding member, and we do it by taking away from the allowance for the leader to appoint an extra one to his cabinet, which he currently has that luxury, it would require a consequential amendment to the constitution to the effect that the leader's cabinet is reduced by one. So can I suggest that we consider that as well, notwithstanding that Councillor Miller is recommending that we do take away from the cabinet size, but I'm just suggesting that would require some ongoing amendments to encapsulate that. I don't want us to go into it blind. Thank you.
Councillor Miller.
Well, I won't respond on that point particularly. I'll leave that to others, Chair. But just to confirm what I said earlier, so my second resolution will read that the committee confirm to council its absolute opposition to abolishing the presiding member post. Full stop. Thank you.
I think that would be fine, Rhiannon. Would that be?
Can I just confirm whether the, what exactly we have on the table right now? Because we've got the first motion, which was seconded by Councillor Mike Stoddart, and then there was discussion about removing the last sentence, and then we've got a new one. Do you mind clarifying exactly what we've got on the table here now?
Put it in the chat, Rhiannon. Other than remove the and condemn the vexatious words led by the independent political group.
Is that the only motion on the table right now? Have you withdrawn the early one, or are you adding to it?
So with your permission, it's the first motion. You disallowed the second part of that, so I've withdrawn that and replaced it with the first half of the second one. So I'll just put it in the chat now to be clear. But sorry, Chair, with your indulgence, I'll just read it quickly. Yeah. One, the committee recommend to council that the presiding member be remunerated at the level of a scrutiny chair, utilising one of the existing cabinet SRI allocations. Number one. And then second, that the committee resolve that forget that. Got to delete that. That wasn't very helpful, was it? Sorry. And the second one is that the committee confirmed to council its absolute opposition to abolishing the presiding member post. Thank you.
Are you confirming that you'll second that, Councillor Stoddart?
I just got a call, Mike Stoddart. Are you seconding that, Mike?
Yes, I second it. I just think what the point Jacob made a little earlier is important, because utilising one of the existing cabinet SRA allocations isn't quite. I think what we've got to do is reduce the number of cabinet posts from 10 to 9 to accommodate that. So there will be whether that's a consequential amendment or something that should be written into this now. I'm not. I'm easy, but there is a slight problem there. And, well, in a way, the second part of Councillor Miller's resolution is redundant, because once we recommend that we remunerate the level of the presiding member, obviously any proposal to abolish the role would be totally inconsistent with that. that's what I can't understand, is how this was allowed ever to be an amendment in the first place at full council level. That completely baffles me. It's totally outside the constitution. But I will second it. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, can I add a comment in? And as you well know, I'm all for remunerating the post. I'm all for keeping the post and remunerating it. The manner in which it's remunerated has to be discussed, other than we'll take a cabinet post, because currently, if the leader decides to take the option up tomorrow, then that would throw this typical scenario out. So I would prefer to remove the option 5 that we had last time and leave it up to individual council members to make the decision, or leave the committee to make the decision, because currently we do have 3 other options, and I appreciate that Councillor Miller's put one of them forward. Would it be applicable to suggest that we've got 3 other options that we discuss before that? Or if everybody wants to go with Councillor Miller's, then we can have a roll call. Obviously, we're going to have a roll call on that first. But would you be considering the other option, the other 3 options, which was one to go to the SRA Allowance Committee and ask for an extra payment? The other one was to potentially explore the current chairman and vice chairman's payments to get those to be moved to the presiding officer and the deputy presiding officer. I'd welcome some comments on that before we actually move to this. Councillor Miller.
Well, while respecting those are options, Chair, they're not my preferred option, and so my motion is that we propose the option I have, but I accept it's for committee if it wishes to recommend other options. My preference is the one that I've stated. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Aled Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. And fully accepting Councillor Miller's proposal, I would assume that actually the other options would still be on the cards for council, because this is just the recommendation of this committee. How council chooses to remunerate is down to council. So if for some reason we want to change it in council, I think that's possible. I think what we really need to clarify here is, do we want to pay the presiding member or not? I think it's getting to that point, and I fully respect everyone's views, and I fully respect Councillor Miller's proposal. So I'm happy just to take it to the vote, to be honest, because it's one way of just sorting it out.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to contribute to this before we go to Councillor Miller's proposition? No? Okay. So I'll see if I can pull that back up in the chat for you. And we'll vote on that the committee confirm. No, that's the wrong one. You've got so many here now, Councillor.
Yeah, sorry, Chair.
That committee recommend to council that the presiding member be remunerated at the level of a scrutiny committee chair, which I think it has to be anyway, because it's that's what's been told to us. It's a level 3 thing.
Yeah, that's correct, Chair.
So would it be applicable to say that we want to agree that it's going to be remunerated? Because you don't need to put that at the level of a scrutiny, because it's already predetermined, that, isn't it?
Yes, it is. That's set by the remuneration panel, that if it is paid, it will be at that band.
Yeah.
3.
Could we then just say at the level recommended by the remuneration panel, just to make it clear with them, Michelle?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to leave that to Councillor Miller. It's his proposal. Do you want to change that to what's been suggested, Councillor Miller?
Yes, I'm content with that, Chair. Yeah. So it will then read that committee recommend to council that the presiding member be remunerated at the level authorised by the independent remuneration panel for Wales, utilising one of the existing cabinet SRA allocations.
Okay. Well, that would be sentence number 2, because it's not utilising from the Independent Panel for Wales. You can't include that in the same sentence. They're not suggesting that. So on that amended proposal, Councillor Stoddard, are you going to second that?
Yeah, I'll second that. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay.
Chair, can I just say you didn't go on to read the rest of what Councillor Miller had in that sentence, or are we voting on the first part first?
We're voting on the first part first, because the second part doesn't...
Well, it's all in one sentence, so forgive me for assuming it was all in one go.
It's all right. So that the committee confirmed to Council its absolute opposition to abolishing the presiding member post.
Well, Councillor Miller's just put something else in the chat box now, and what I'm suggesting, I said sentence, I meant paragraph. He's put the 2 parts all in one block, and I'm suggesting, are we voting on all of that in one vote, or are we doing the first sentence first and then the second sentence?
Can you put a full stop after Wales there, Paul?
No, that's what I'm getting at is, are we having 2 votes now on that part, or are we having 1 vote for it all?
No, we're having 2 votes.
I don't think that's what Councillor Miller's proposing, but maybe I'm wrong.
Councillor Miller?
I think it's all getting a little confused, and I'm probably part of the problem, so I apologise. I think, for clarity, I am now happy with what's written in the chat, so I'm going to make that as one proposal, if that's okay, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, so the proposal is finally, Mike, if you want to second this, that committee recommend to Council that the presiding member be remunerated at the level authorised by the Independent Remuneration Panel for Wales, utilising one of the existing Cabinet SRA allocations. That is the proposal.
No, you're missing out the next part. That's what I'm getting at, Chair. He's suggesting that you need to read the next line and then we vote on it all as one.
Councillor Miller, do you want to clarify that you still want the opposition to abolishing the presiding member in that?
Yes, please, Chair. Thank you.
I just don't understand that would be part of it if we've recommended that it be remunerated.
Well, we did exactly that a few weeks ago, and that's why we're in this mess.
I'm asking Councillor Miller, is that what he wants?
I do understand what you're saying, Chair, but I think it probably is semantics, but I would be keen that we particularly emphasise and reinforce our opposition to abolishing the post. Thank you.
So we're going to keep this all as one?
Yeah.
Okay. So... Councillor Stoddard, you again going to second this all as one?
I think I'm 10th in it now, Chairman. I will second it again, yeah.
Thank you. Let's have a roll call on the voting then. Let's just get rid of that chat so I can see who's in here. Councillor Pat Davis.
4.
Councillor Mike Stoddard.
4.
Councillor Paul Miller.
4, Chair.
Councillor David Howlett.
Against.
Councillor Michelle Bateman.
4.
Councillor Vanessa Thomas.
Against.
Councillor Josh Bainan.
4.
Councillor Jacob Williams.
4.
Councillor Hugh Murphy.
Against.
Councillor Angie Tinley.
Against.
Councillor Steve Alderman.
4.
And myself, I'm against. So I think that's a majority 4.
Ali Thomas.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't. This list isn't going down far enough for me. Councillor Ali Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I am unsurprisingly against the proposal.
Thank you. Right. Have we got the numbers there, Rhiannon?
7, 4, 6 against, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So that motion's carried forward.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll let full council thrash that one out then.